Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and I'm super pumped. Got referred to this person, or he got referred to me, I don't know, by a great friend, Jen Duplessis. So if you don't know Jen, she runs her own podcast, and she is like on so many podcasts, speaks all across the country and internationally on how to build a better life and actually experience life with your family. This is a little commercial for Jen just because I love her so much. She was like one of the number one loan officers in America, great at that, but found herself out on a curb during most of her family activities and missing her family's life. And so she changed her whole life and started teaching people how to have a mixture of, you can be good at your career, but also be more intentional with your family and spend those things. And she talks about a lot of other stuff, but like that message strikes home for me and probably every other high performing individual. You recognize the times that you're not with your family when you could be, or you're with your family, but you're not really with your family because you're so distracted by the little thing in your pocket or tied to your ear that you're missing out on life. And anyways, love and respect her for helping me learn some of those lessons. Still learning, still trying, but that's how that is. But she introduced me to Kristoffer Doura, and Kristoffer Doura is an absolute stud. Been through a lot of stuff. I'm not going to cover it all in the intro, but he's an incredible human. In the NFL, played on Miami, played in Montreal, and then finished up at the Pittsburgh, and just had a great life. And what is more important than his football career, although that's exciting. I always love talking to high performing individuals who have kind of reached the top of their game. But the interesting thing, and kind of why we do this podcast, is what do you do after you've reached the top of your game? And do you like that legacy? Is that a legacy that stands alone? You go build another legacy? Or do you find out how to continue being who you were, just performing in a different field? So I'm excited. I'm going to grow Kristoffer, but first, before I dig into him, I'm going to let him get his piece out first, introduce himself, where he came from, why he is so passionate about legacy like me. So go for it, Kristoffer.
Samuel Knickerbocker, man, what a name. I love it, man. The second Jen told me about you, I said, I got to meet this guy. And when we connected, it was amazing because we had such a great conversation. And I was just excited to share a little bit of value, a little bit of my story and how I feel about legacy. 6'7", 85-inch wingspan. You would imagine who's this humongous refrigerator. It's this gladiator that had the opportunity to go to a pro, and obviously have a great career, but it came to an end for me as my legacy was impacted. But I got a second chance at life, and God is great. I'm very fortunate, and when you think about what happened to me in pro sports, it was a big transition for me. Being that I didn't play football all my life. My family is from Haiti. They left, the island 40 plus years ago. Had me and my siblings. We're a family of 5, 3 children. We were all born in Queens, Flushing, New York. It was a little cold for us because, one of my siblings had asthma, so we had to transition out of New York, and we decided to come to Florida. Being that, Haiti's maybe an hour and 15-minute flight away, and we had a lot of family here. Florida was really my upbringing. Grew up here, didn't do the whole sport thing even in middle school. It was because I wanted to find a community. I wanted to find brotherhood. I wanted that culture. I wanted to be a part of something special. My junior year in high school, I actually went to Miami Southridge, senior high. We had Coach Stu Rogers, and, my condolences to his family because he actually passed. But he was the head coach. Then he came up to me one day and said, "Kris, you look wide." And I was like, well, whoa, what a way to, have a conversation starter. But, he saw something in me that inspired me. He told me, why don't you come out and just check out the football team? And I said, okay, what is that going to do? He said, well, you may even have an opportunity to go to college. That's really what rang a bell for me. Because I know that, my family, we were in a position to send me to a very, Ivy League school or one of those very expensive universities. So I said, that might be an opportunity for me. I decided to trust my coach and I came out. I played 1 year in high school and then I ended up getting a scholarship. I took the deal and I actually attended West Virginia, now University of Charleston in West Virginia. There's a couple of, Charlestons, but people don't, tend to seem to remember West Virginia, coal mine state. But it was a great experience for me. I had a lot of adversity. I spent about 5 years there. And I studied business and I realized that, for me, I wanted to make sure I was prepared. And by being prepared was by making sure I had an education. I studied business administration. And because of that, I put myself in position to say, what if this thing doesn't work out? Trading Places was a movie that I watched as a child. Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy, and you saw Pork Belly's Future. These guys look successful. And I was intrigued by that. So that's what really was the line, hook, and sink for me to, kind of jump to business, in college. Spent 5 years at the university. I got a master's in business administration. And then I had two options. Sam, I kid you not. It was either, private sector. We had relationships in Shanghai to do internships and start writing corporate, or the NFL. I didn't have an entourage. I didn't have ESPN highlights, and it wasn't like I had somebody guiding me. It was because I was 6'7". I played offensive line. And I could kick slide on the blind side of the quarterback. So that was really what was intriguing for the NFL to say, well, who is this guy? My coach relayed that information to me, and I said, by the grace of God, this is an opportunity, and I'm not giving it up. I decided, I had my certification, and I pursued sport. 2010, I walked on to the Miami Dolphins, and, Tony Sperano was the head coach at the time, and, Chad Henne was the quarterback, but my condolences as well to Tony Sperano's family, because he's also, he passed. But that was the entry for me as a walk-on. Fast forward, I had the opportunity to, go to Canada for the Montreal Alouettes under Mark Trestman, and that was amazing. And, built some resume, built my game film, and realized that I had to return to the U.S. and then with Pittsburgh. That was a change for me in my whole football universe, where in one, training camp, I collapsed on the field, and it was because of dehydration. I didn't know what was going on. All I remember was being placed into an ambulance and rushed over to the UPMC. Now, we're talking major trauma. One of the largest, hospitals in the East region. And, when the doctors looked at me, they said, Kris, it doesn't look good. I'm 22 years old, had no idea what was going on. All I know is my heart's racing, I'm sweating, and I don't know what to do. No family there, and I'm by myself, and I've never met any of these people. The doctor said, well, Kris, here's the thing. You actually dehydrated, but it's worse than that. I said, what does that mean? They say you have a blood clot. And we had to make a decision to remove the blood clot, or we'd have to cut your leg off and amputate it. I mean, being 22 years old, that's not something you want to hear. But I said, you know what? By the grace of God, I'm going to pray, and I'm going to put my faith in God's hands. We decided to go and do an operation. And I said, you know what? If I'm not leaving here at 22 years old and with one leg. I got so much ahead of me, and I won't find a wife, for crying sake. So I said, let's see if we can, do some surgery and get this blood clot out. I went with that option, and as they performed, surgery, my heart flatlined, and I died. And it's happened a decade ago, but I still get a tingle in my spine to know that I got a second chance at life, and there's a purpose for me outside of just playing football. So when I realized that I had a new purpose is when I woke up that next morning and I saw my family, my parents, my siblings. And at that moment, I had nothing in me to hold together. I broke down. And I realized that, my legacy is about family. My legacy is about what I'm doing for others, service. And that was when I decided to hang up the cleats. I had a great opportunity to get to the highest level, but I knew it wasn't my end game. And from that moment on, I said, you know what, I got to transition out of this place and get back to Miami and rebuild myself again. That's when I realized that at that very moment, it took about 8 months to kind of get back on my feet. But as soon as I got strong enough, I always had the inkling to get into finance and get into the whole, financial professional game as an advisor. Today I love what I do. I talk about legacy, whether it's for business owners, whether it's for nonprofits. I've become a published author. My first book I've written in the pandemic called Let's Get It, 10 Keys to a Sustainable Life Fulfilling Nonprofit Organizations. It's not a biography of who I am in football. It's really a story of my journey, but it's a story that's compelling enough to have a three-pronged approach. One, helping leaders that run these organizations, helping to strengthen their teams, but then lastly, making sure that they can understand how to become sustainable. And the book is going to be available in November, so definitely want you guys to pick that up on Target, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, every major distribution channel you can think of. You'll be able to access Let's Get It. But that's really my story, where today I practice in my profession as a financial advisor on legacy planning. Now, that means a lot of different things for different people, but I feel that with the smarts that I have been able to educate myself and gain, with this book that I'm putting out there to really help people and organizations, I'm going to change, the world. But the content is going to be available for everybody to access. But I'm the type of person that I'm a giver, and I want to make sure that I'm able to share my story as for inspiration. I'm able to share a little bit of my journey and through my optics so people can take away nuggets to help them change their vision of what legacy really means. It's not always a financial play. It could be what you do in the community as a philanthropist. It could be also how you're spending time at home in your community church, or what you do with your family and your children. And I think that all ties back into kind of what you and I both do, is help people kind of get their financial affairs together. But, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm hungry, and I want to, continue, putting good out there. But that's a little bit about me and who I am today, and kind of what I focus on is kind of just putting good out there into the world.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to dig into this. And isn't that crazy, guys? Like, just the whole story of where you came from. To go into this a little bit more, like, how old were you, or were you even alive when your family moved from Haiti to America?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm sorry. My parents, they actually came to the States and had the eldest sibling in America. So my parents took the risk and said, we're going to do this together. My parents are still together. It's been about 39 years that they decided that they wanted to, still, be actively, working and to be, participating in the economy. And they decided that they wanted really a better life for their children. So that's why I decided to kind of transition from the Caribbean and come to the U.S. to really offer us the opportunity.
And for them, are they, I just have noticed this with a lot of immigrants, sometimes they don't take the full advantage of the American dream. They see they almost like they're told that they should go to school, get a good job, and that's going to be the American dream. They're going to become financially independent. And I'm not going to say that track isn't better than where they came from. I'm sure it's way better than they came from. So they're grateful, and they probably feel like that's winning. But for somebody who can't, grew up here, I wouldn't say that's the American dream. Like, that's like the standard for most of us. So then the American dream is like your background, a jet, it's like, hey, let's go for it. Let's find out all that we can be. I'm curious if your parents, where did they end up? Do they go to entrepreneur land? Do they go to employee? Where are they at? And what has been their journey through this coming from another country?
Yeah, well, my parents, definitely instill education was number one for the children, because obviously they wanted us to advance and have an opportunity. I mean, today, entrepreneurism is kind of, the next kind of phase of American wealth and being able to be financially free. But, entrepreneur is not a very single person. Obviously, people love, corporate. They love, working with people. For me, when you think about my parents, my father's retired. Living his best life. My mother's still actively working in retail. She just loves, being able to get up every morning and kind of helping others. And, what I take away from that is that they still have their values. They still, make sure that they're, paying their taxes. They're still, making sure that they're giving back to society, and then just, elevating their family by, making sure that we stay together. I think really togetherness when you have a family is really your tribe. And you learn a lot about yourself. You learn how to move, you learn how to make decisions, and you learn how to advance. But everything starts with your roots. So my parents today are still a part of my world. I'm so blessed to have them here still. And I value that. And I feel that, that's really what drives me to want more for myself and to be able to put myself in position through education. Because without knowledge, you don't have any power. People, get windfalls, they win the lottery, they have opportunities, and they can hit big, hit a home run. But it's like, well, it's not getting it, it's keeping it. That's the big difference maker.
So in that regard, and I love that they're still valued and they're still choosing to work because they can. When you were talking about getting into the NFL, I'm curious because you've been there, you've talked to all these individuals. Some people, I'm sure, because I know multiple NFL players. Some of them came from good backgrounds. I would say good pedigree. They had a good shot to get in it the whole time, and they got in. And that's their career. And it's not like, and not to say that they didn't have to fight, and everybody has to earn their spot. Nobody gets to walk on, right? But I think there's some people who see the chance of a sport as you see it, as like, hey, this is a way for us to get out of one situation and into the next situation. I feel like some people, they go into, and not just football, but this is anything, they go into it for the fame rather than for the personal or family development, for the community, rather than going into something for a community, they go into it for themselves just because they want to be able to have their name on the back of a jersey or whatever. So I want you to speak to like the contrast of the people you met, and you don't have to use names, but the people that like were there for them, and then the people who are there, and in their mind, it wasn't Kristoffer who was in the NFL, but it was the whole Doura family, and not just the ones in America, but the ones in Haiti, and the community that got you there, your coach, your school, your everybody. So, like, talk about those two different mentalities and how they were manifested onto the football field or into the game.
Yeah, it's about, humble, being able to have gratitude that, if you have an ability, a talent, and you maximize on that opportunity, what you do with it is in your control. And what I did with it when I received it was I paid it forward. I made sure to learn from others who have been there before me and also give back to the ones who are behind me coming into the biz. Everybody has a different story. Nobody has the same, thing that they write on a piece of paper, because God has a destiny for us all. We just have to go after and get it. Now, when you think about, the contrasts of how I was when I was in the league as opposed to how I am out of the league, there's no difference. It's still the same mentality. I still wake up every single morning at 5:30 a.m. and I'm reading my Bible. And then I make a cup of coffee. And then I'm making sure that I get myself prepared to have a winning day. That never changed. That's just, the work ethic that I built being an athlete, and then apply that to my real life today. Now I'm in finance, but I'm not getting up and doing meetings or working out. I mean, I do, but not necessarily as aggressive as when I was a player. But now I'm waking up in the morning, educating myself, applying and putting more knowledge towards new certifications and really making sure that I'm setting the stage for the next person that wants mentorship. We got to all, give each other a pat on the back. Guys like you and I that are in the financial world, it's not an easy business. The NFL wasn't an easy business, but when you got grit and you see something bigger than yourself, you tend to want to share and bless others. And with what we do, we have to put a certain type of focus. So guys who don't see value in that because they've been privileged to have the opportunity, but they didn't know how to manage it. Not everybody, you can't save every single person, but you can save a lot of people who are open-minded. And I really want to make sure that I embellish the fact that people who are open-minded have the opportunity to grow. And those are the people that I like surrounding myself with. I try to eliminate any negativity because it doesn't do anything but take away value. And if you're not adding, you're subtracting. And I believe in the power of change. So, when you think about contrast, it's still what I do today, how I'm living my life, how I'm putting God first, and just really delegating, how I'm, being a philanthropist in the community. You only get one shot. It's not, what you said. It's not, how you did something. It's how you made that person feel. That's what they remember 20 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like I want to dig deeper. Okay. I want to go like what, because the people. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe this is the thing. Were there people there who were there just for themselves in the NFL and they didn't care? They weren't really team players, or at that level, everybody's a team player.
Man, that applies to everybody in life. It's not just the league. You always got bad seeds in every basket, obviously, but you eliminate bad seeds or you get rid of those type of bad seeds that are not helping you grow and prosper. Everybody has their own character. You meet guys who are very selfish and you meet guys who are very humble, but it's your decision how you surround yourself around those types of people. They eventually get weeded out. And obviously they get weeded out because it becomes too tough, or they have, injuries, or they have scenarios where they just get ejected out of the business. But it really, there isn't a arena, whether it's NFL, sports, finance, music, that you don't find people who just don't have the ability to kind of want to give to others and be humble. You always find people in any industry that you're a part of that just don't belong, but because they have the talent, they're there. And really, when you think about working hard, that really outweighs, talent sometimes, because the guy who's going to do it right every single time versus the guy who has the talent that's cutting corners, 10 times, out of a scenario, the guy who has the talent is probably going to be faded out because he's going to want to cheat. He's going to want to, do something that's not compliant, or he's going to want to do something that just, puts him in a bad spot versus the guy who may not have all the great talent like the superstar, but at the same time is there on time, is humble about every meeting, and is willing to, spend extra hours to learn. That's the type of people that you want to surround yourself with in any industry, whether it's finance, whether it's sports. So you, as professionals ourselves, we want to be around people who are positive all around. So I think that answers your question, hopefully,
yeah,
but
you're good. You're good. I think it's a very important thing to understand that if you're in life for yourself, so it's interesting. So I actually, my tagline, it's not that I disagree with it, but I think I just can go deeper, was that, I believe you're worth being remembered. And I do believe you're worth being remembered. I believe everybody's worth being remembered. The question is, are you doing what you're doing every day so selfishly so that you can be remembered that way? Like almost like a Potemkin village where you're just like making sure everybody perceives you a certain way, and that's why you're doing it, so that you can be remembered the way you want to be remembered, i.e. legacy? Or are you living are you becoming a person that's worth being remembered? There's two, you can use the same phrase and connotation changes it. And I think that the people who are actually, in my mind, worth being remembered, they're not living with 3 years in mind or 10 years or the future in mind necessarily. They're living their best self today with zero worry about how they're going to be remembered, but they're living in integrity with themselves. And I think a lot of times people, and this is what you said is, I believe true, it's been my experience, that you can find the people who are there for themselves, because when things get too hard, when things become intolerable, when there's setbacks, those people who are there for themselves will say, this is no longer I'm not worth this type of trouble, so they'll weed themselves out. You don't have to eliminate people from your life, in my experience. So there's this, you're the average of the 5 people you're with. I don't know that you have to actually eliminate people from your life most of the time, because I think most of those people who are uncomfortable with you living a higher level of integrity or standard, they will recognize that they're uncomfortable being around you, and they will weed themselves out. right? Those people, they find their own way to the door and to leave the team. It's not like you have to kick the cheater off the team. The cheater gets caught so many times that they're like, what? Why can't we cheat? Nobody wants to help me cheat? Frick, I got to go find somewhere else to cheat at, right? So they weed themselves out. And then at some level, the people who are there for their team, who their behaviors, it doesn't just reflect on themselves, because you can lie to yourself pretty easily. You can tell yourself a pretty good story about why you did something unethical, out of integrity, or whatever. But trying to explain that to your mom and dad who were rooting for you, or your employer, or the government, whatever it is, like trying to explain why you're unethical to them is doesn't go over the same. And so I think that that's a key thing, that the people who are in life for themselves, who are trying to build their own legacy with the intention of like, I'm here to create this facade of what I want people to see, I think they always fail. Like they always get weeded out. I don't know anybody who didn't get weeded out yet that's that way. That doesn't mean they all end up poor. Some of them still end up very wealthy, just with not very many friends, in my experience. So I'm curious about that, as far as when you're in your community, you're in middle school, you have no idea that you could be good at football, or well, you made it into junior high, didn't you, before you actually?
Well, yeah, I did play football in junior high. I actually did 1 year. My junior year, 11th grade spring football was when I tried out, and then I just played one full season of my senior year in high school, and that's when I took off. Actually, I'm a late bloomer. But to answer your question, yes, I do believe that you have to be a little selfish, and it doesn't mean you're not doing it for the right reasons. As you said, living your best life today and putting your best efforts out there, but making sure that by being selfish doesn't mean that you're hurting anyone, or doesn't mean you're unethical. It can mean that you're just spending your time wisely, not going to the parties, or not buying the extra beer, or making sure that you stay focused and disciplined with your health. Because I think that's really where, if you become selfish in those ways, it really pays tenfold. And that's really where, legacy plays such a humongous role in being selfish, because obviously you want to be remembered for the good that you're leaving behind. I got a second chance at life. So my legacy is a little different now that I've already, seen the light and had the opportunity, get back, to basics. So what I'm fighting for today is, how am I helping to solve a problem? I'm a part of several different nonprofits in the Tri-County of Florida, from Palm Beach all the way Broward and Miami. And most of the organizations that I participate with are either social services, children, or the arts. Because I believe that, we together as humanity, we do better together. And it starts off with, mentorship. So those are the reasons why I go so hard in the paint, if that makes sense. And I go so hard because I want to make sure that people are going to remember the good that I've done, the education that I've shared. My book is one part of my legacy, because I want many lives to read that book globally. It's not just something that will be applied in the USA. This book was created to be able to touch many organizations around the world. And I encourage people that I'm making a way for myself. I'm stamping my own ground by, putting out information, doing good in the community, and becoming a role model. So selfishly, I am eliminating, meetings that aren't important. I am making sure that I'm not spending time with people who are not helping me level up. And I'm making sure that I'm taking my health seriously, because those are the things that are selfishly things that I need to do to be able to leave behind a legacy. So people remember, well, this guy had focus. This guy was really able to kind of, concentrate on putting out stuff, to help others. But if I'm distracted, I'm not doing much with my legacy. So I do feel, to answer your question, being selfish, but being selfish for the right reasons, is how we're able to, really leave a legacy behind, depending on whoever and whatever track record that you're following.
Right. So let's talk about the mentor. I say mentor, coach, that saw, what I would call it is, he saw through God's eyes. As in, if you walk into a room there's people in that room, and it's interesting how sometimes you walk into a room and you don't see anybody, or maybe you only see one or two people. But do you see everybody in that room? Do you really see the way God sees? And do you see through their eyes and say, hey, if I were to go help that one person believe in themselves a little bit more, give that one person a shot, they would be able to recognize their potential and reach all these different levels of growth because somebody first believed in them. So I'm curious, at what point did you start to really trust and believe this mentor? Because it's one thing to walk up to somebody and say, hey, man, you would be great at football. You should come join the team. This could mean college for you. This could mean whatever. It happens to all of us. If anybody's ever been in sales, then there's always going to be a classic like, hey, you could have XYZ incentive for somebody else to do something, and then ultimately it's in our best interest. So I'm just curious, at what point did you say, you know what, football is actually in my best interest at this point? It's not just a potential thing that could be, but like football right now is in my best interest.
Yeah, well, nobody's above God. And I think to answer your question, I became stronger in my faith when I went through adversity at my university. Things that I went through where I wanted to quit because people didn't treat me fairly. I went through racism. I went through being belittled. I went through a lot of things that, if I was not strong in my faith, if I didn't have strong family values, I would have quit and I wouldn't be here today. But I feel that through going through a challenge and facing adversity is where I say, all I have really is me, my family, and my faith. There's nothing tangibly or nothing monetarily that would have changed how I felt during that phase of my life. So I give it to God to say that God has inspired me because I have went through adversity, but has taught me a lesson. And that lesson is what I'm sharing with the youth today. That as long as you have your head on straight, you surround yourself with the right people. People need people. Whether we like it or not, we can't do this alone. And when you have the right people around you and you have strong faith, whatever you believe in, as long as you believe in something that's, bigger than what you see in the mirror, I think that's really where, things start to connect. And I always encourage people to, get out of your comfort zone. Get involved, get around people that are smarter, that are more intelligent, that can help you accelerate. And I think that's really the seeds that I want to plant with our youth, because I realize that this economy and how things are happening right now, the millennials are only focusing on what's fast and what's technology. I didn't grow up with all that stuff. I'm a little older, but at the same time, I'm still able to adapt. I didn't have all the resources that the kids today have, but the difference is they're less healthy. They're less interested and engaged in the classroom. They're not putting themselves in position to win because they're relying upon a system. So when you think about challenge, it's good. When you think about people that are giving you resistance, it really helps you grow. There is no progress without some type of impact that changes you or pulls you towards something that can help change what you're doing. And I do believe that I owe it all up to God that helped me see that light during the phase of my life when I went through adversity at my university.
I think that's I love the University of Adversity. Like those words work really good. That should be your next book title, University of Adversity. Because you're right. I think that having adversity is and the right, I say the right, a supportive belief around the adversity you're going through. There's a lot of people who go through adversity and they just wallow in self-pity the whole time and they don't learn a dang thing from it. And then it's like, that sucks that you went through all that and you didn't get anything out of it. Whereas if you can keep a perspective and say, hey, I'm so grateful that I got given these gifts of adversity because that helped me set me up for these wins. And that's the University of Adversity. It's really crushing the worst sides of that and really looking at what is the benefit of this. and then having the foresight to say, look, what if this doesn't work? I'm 20, 18, 20, 19 years old. What if I don't make it in the NFL? Like, make it for 40 years. I mean, how long has Tom Brady been going at this thing?
The GOAT, so I think the guy's going 20 plus years, like very similar
like
to
a long
Brett
time.
Favre.
Him and Aaron Rodgers, man, they just don't stop, which is awesome. Why should they stop? They don't have to. They're still fit. They're still doing well for their teams. Their teams are still winning. Like, there's no reason for them to stop. But it is fascinating to think, like, that's a small percentage of the people who are in the NFL. There's a large percentage of people in the NFL that don't quite make it 10, 15 years, And so going in with the understanding, hey, this is the situation. How do I set myself up for a win when I get out of the NFL? How do I set myself up, and not just myself, but my family, up for a win when I move past this stage of my life? What's the next stage? And being able to see that into the future, I think that is it's a skill that can be developed. And it's much easier when you have good mentors who assist you in the development of it. Anybody can develop it, but it's definitely a lot easier when you have other people helping you. So since you've been helping other families, and one of the things that you mentioned on the phone call was that a large part of what you're helping people do is when they are thinking about legacy planning, they're thinking about, hey, what do I want to create for my next future generations, either personally or with the team around those people. What you mentioned about helping people leave things to nonprofits or start nonprofits or fund nonprofits. Explain more about this nonprofit space that you have found yourself in. And if somebody wanted to get involved in a nonprofit, how do they vet? I mean, there's so many nonprofits out there that just really just a shell company for lots of money. How do you know if, like, the nonprofit you're being involved with or you're donating to is actually worth it? Where could they go to get a resource to actually say, hey, is this nonprofit using funds appropriately? Or are they just like, well, we got to pay all of our advisors $200,000 a year. Oh, there's only $10,000 left to help the kids. That's too bad. Yeah.
Well, I do believe people, I recommend them to find an organization, a nonprofit that they believe in their mission. The mission really brings you and pulls you towards being of service. But nonprofits, they're all public information. There are websites that people can check out, the 990 report, the statement of financial position. So you are able to at least learn what they're doing with their resources. And this is public information. If somebody wants to really dig deep, if they want to do their research online to figure out, the numbers, they can do that. But what's even more important is, learn about the board, learn about the people who are involved, understand, what the organization's actually doing in regards to their community engagement, the relationships and the partners that they have, really, mix and mingle at community events to kind of figure out how the people are, what are they talking about? Are they really focused on their mission, or are they just in it for themselves? A lot of people do join nonprofit boards because they want to put on their resume, but they really are not active. And in my experience, when I talk about legacy and I talk about really helping an organization with sustainability, it's strategic planning. It's really attracting donors that want to be able to make an impact, but then really allowing a donor to understand, well, what can they really do to leave that impact if they have businesses or personal wealth, or they want to just, impact a mission tenfold. There are financial products and strategies and different concepts that I explain in my book of how to do those things. But I think if we're talking purely vanilla, somebody wants to learn about how to get involved with a organization that is worthy and that is honest, you got to actually, do some due diligence and kind of check them out, join them or at least, spend some time and talk to the people that are a part of the organization. And you'll know with your gut feeling if it feels right. There's no better judge of character than your gut feeling and your heart. Because you know from the very moment you meet somebody in the first 5 to 10 seconds, if that's somebody you're going to have another conversation with. And I felt that way about you, Sam, when we talked. I felt like this is a guy I want to get to know. It's a guy I want to definitely build a friendship with. But I knew that from the conversation we had. You're Jen Duplessis, amazing, amazing superstar professional. She spoke very highly of you, but it was up to me to want to come on your show because of how you made me feel when we had a conversation. So that just shows me that you're the type of guy that I want to get to know. But if it was something different, then I probably wouldn't have made it. But when you think about the nonprofits, it's the people. Going back to it's how you feel, not what somebody said that you remember. And I feel that a lot of people today, they should, and I encourage them to get involved with their communities because that's really what's provoking people to want to change is by getting involved.
Yeah, I love that. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you to learn more about how they could get involved or what are the resources around their community, or just want to be on like a pre-sale book list so they can get the pre-sale or whatever, where would they contact you? Where would they go to meet?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for just allowing me to share some of my handles. People can check me out on my website, www.KristofferDoura.com. My name is spelled with a KRistofferDoura.com. I'm on all media handles from Instagram to Facebook Business and even LinkedIn. So if people really want to get in touch and connect some dots, they can find me and connect with me through my website. And that's the easiest way to kind of, get together, see what's happening in my world, things I'm a part of, learn more about my story, and just check it out, for yourselves, because that's really where I'm going to be able to really share, content, that it's accessible for the globe.
Awesome. I love that. So this is the last part of the podcast called Legacy on Rapid Fire. One of my favorite things. Just 5 questions, 1 word to 1 sentence answers. So we can move fast but have a succinct kind of answers here. So what do you believe is the hardest thing that you've ever accomplished?
Graduating college.
Okay, love that. Hey, that's true. That's true. I did not graduate college. I made it to my associates and said, "This is not for me. I like entrepreneurship better." So that's pretty impressive. What's been your greatest success to this point in your life?
I published my first book. And it felt great finishing that project.
I bet. It's a big thing. So if there was 1 or 2 secret habits, mindsets, or behaviors you feel like have helped you contribute the most to your success, what would 1 or 2 of those be?
Consistency and your health. Because if you're consistent, you'll still keep practicing the right type of practices that apply to you. And being able to have a sound mind, eating right, working out, staying on top of your best game. Those are the 2 variables that I put together that have allowed me to be successful. Consistency and good health.
Awesome. And what do you feel is holding you back right now from reaching the next level of your legacy today?
Well, I don't know enough people. So I think, making friends, building new relationships, but it's not about knowing a million people. It's about cultivating the relationships that you have, because going back to people need people. If I know 10 awesome people, those 10 people know thousands of people. So that means I know 10,000s of people. So I rather have a small circle of quality people that exponentially allow me to connect with their friends. And I think that's really the power of people, is being able to really put yourself around the right people who can help you grow and elevate your game.
Sure. I was gonna say something like that, so I'm glad you said it. So what's 1 or 2 books that you'd recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
Let's Get It. 10 Keys to a Sustainable Life, Fulfilling Nonprofit Organizations, authored by Kristoffer Doura. But then another book that I actually read at my university was by John C. Maxwell. It's a leadership book. It's the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. It changed my life. It really just allowed me to put some perspective into how I want to be as a man, a mentor, and a leader. And I think that really changed the way that I live today. And, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. I had a meeting yesterday with a young guy. He was 20 years old, didn't know what he wanted to do. But I said, you know what? Here's a book that I want to recommend to you. And he took that advice, and he immediately, I mean, within 2 hours of us meeting, he sent me a follow-up email. He was so grateful that I was able to spend the time with him to just mentor him, you know, get to know him, hear his story, and then just add value. And I think that book added value to my life. So I want to be tenfold and add value to somebody else's life and say, go pick my book up and John C. Maxwell book up.
That's right. No, that's right. That's good. I'm glad you said your own book. It's so funny how many people, authors, will come on here, they have a book, and when they get asked that, myself included sometimes, when somebody's like, well, what book should I read? I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I recommend my book, but not everybody's good for my book. My book was written for a certain person, and maybe you need a different recommendation. But I think that's awesome. I love it, and I'm glad you brought that up. Is there a specific website for that book, or is it just you go to KristofferDoura.com? And
you can go to KristofferDoura.com as a landing page, specifically a page for the book. And it takes you exactly, to some of the channels that you can actually access it for purchase. So definitely KristofferDoura.com is the main hub.
Okay, cool. So then this is a final question, and I'm curious to see how you're going to respond to it, right? But let's pretend that we're 6 generations from now. That's your great-great-great-great-grandchildren. They're sitting around a table discussing the life that you led, the impact you had over dinner. What do you want them to be saying about your life 6 generations from now?
I want them to say, Grandpa, we're so happy that you never gave up. And you sacrificed to put this family's legacy in position. I'm the only son in my family that can continue the Doura legacy. So I got to find an amazing person, and I got to be able to connect with an amazing spouse, which I'm single. I have no children, so I'm a bachelor. I'm putting that out there. But connecting with the right person to help me build a legacy. So 6 generations from now, you know, my kids can say, you know what, we're happy that Grandpa never gave up because he knew the power of generational wealth. And that's through leaving a legacy. But, you know, being consistent and applying yourself and never quitting was the reason why we're sitting at the dinner table now talking about it.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, well, that's so cool. Thank you so much for your time. If you guys can, definitely go and write a review, share what you learned from this podcast. And then if you really want to do is the extra step, which I think should be maybe the first step, is go connect with Kristoffer on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you are most often, and go shoot him a text and say, hey, thank you for sharing that word of wisdom with us on the Fuel Your Legacy show, because that is what we actually gain from. That's where we're actually growing and all becoming as we take the information and apply it into our lives. But reach out to him, build a relationship. He's super, super cool. Why would you not want to know him? I don't, just because he lives in Miami. It's maybe you're in Miami. See, for me, I'm in Arizona, opposite side of the world. But when he comes out here, we can still hang out. It's awesome.
Well, thank you, Samuel Knickerbocker. Awesome guy. With gratitude, I'm grateful that I had the ability to come on the show and be a guest. Look forward to many, many seasons ahead. I want to be in full support of you as well. Thank you for your time and allowing me to share my story. So I look forward to develop our relationship. And yes, when you're in Miami, you check me out. We're going to host you and your family here with a good time. Because when I go to Arizona, I definitely want to call you.
Cool. Well, we got a new slide for you. That's for sure. Awesome. Hey, well, we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.